Some very interesting sort of themes emerging. I mean, I think all the presentations at some stage referred to a space where the senior management team were locked up in a room for 1 day or 2 days and were lectured to, had access to, had conversations with climate change experts, peers, other businesses. There was mention about how you can't put everybody, when you have a company of 8,000 people, through that, so the more straightforward, off-the-shelf, desktop-type training to get people a little bit more confident. A lot of the four talked about, but our training doesn't actually stop with our own people. We do mentorship with local entrepreneurs, with training schools, which is really interesting when you think how, Stuart, you ended yours, about ultimately the real drive for change is a market intervention. I think that actually sort of helps us wake up to these issues when the customer actually asks for it or actually has to work in a different legislative regime. So you can see how, let's help train people outside in order to ask us the right questions. Collaboration both internally, project managers working with other project managers in a slightly different way, collaboration with NGOs and the skill sets you need to do that, balance between general knowledge for everybody and specialists in the business. Completely agree with Stuart that the ultimate question to that ultimate question, the ultimate answer to that ultimate question is, well, it's both, and the proportion between both varies. So I think lots of interesting things to take home. We've now got a few minutes for questions to our four speakers. I think there are some live remotes. There's quite a small room, so if you prefer just to shout, but Katie's got some mics. So are there any questions or bigger observations people want to make of the discussions before we go to table conversations? And if you could just say who you are as well, because people always like to know. This gentleman, blue, table 14. Oh, I've got a blind spot as well. So, table 2 and then table 14.
Hi, it's... Ooh.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody ever wants to say remove the passion or remove the emotion from the subject. I mean, I'm guessing that's why pretty much why you're involved in it. But something that I kind of noticed in our workplace that I think is a bit of a barrier, that it's perceived as being something, when I did that survey saying what qualifications do people need to manage the sustainability function, and it came back with, passion, commitment. Membership of Greenpeace came up quite a lot. There's nothing about having a technical range of skills or a qualification or something like that. And I suppose the question is, to what degree, if at all, do the panel think that passion, emotional aspect actually detracts in some ways from the fact that there is a set of skills, be it around, life cycle analysis or carbon footprinting or all these other things that have a technical knowledge base. Is there a conflict there, or does there need to be a conflict there?
Can you be too passionate?
I'll have a go at kicking that one off. I think certainly the cohorts that went through the training that we rolled out, some were interested in the training because they had an interest in the subject. But the way we positioned it was very much around there is a business benefit here. If you want to be able to support your customers in this changing world, you need to understand this. And there's something, therefore, in it for you, and you will build deeper, longer-term relationships with your customers as a consequence of it. And so some were interested because they got it at a sort of an emotional level. And so for the audience, we actually designed it with 3 audiences in mind. Those who think with their hearts, those who think with their heads, and those who think with their wallets. And you've got to design for those 3 audiences if it's going to be a truly sustainable learning and development program within the audience. We also did the skills analysis. We looked at what was the end point, what did we want to achieve with all of this, and then worked the course through to that end point. It would be very easy for us, for those who are passionate on the subject, to just deal with the passion. I mean, for goodness sake, get this, the world is changing, wake up and smell the coffee. That's not going to work for those who think with their heads and those who think with their wallets. It will work for those who think with their hearts. So you have to design the program, which we've done, to meet with those 3 audiences.
Okay, Stuart.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting question. I mean, we have 5 core values, and one of them is pride and passion, and we feel that most of our clients want us to be passionate about what we do. So we're not fearful of that emotion. But interestingly, as I mentioned, our biggest business is in Sweden. And that is the one core value that doesn't translate well into Swedish. They don't get it. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Sweden, but they are very logical people. They use common sense, and yet they are so much more advanced around the sustainability agenda than any other part of our business. Because I think to them, it's just common sense. You don't have to get emotional about it. It's just common sense. So I think there's a healthy balance between just what makes sense, both for society, for business, because they see it makes sense for making money as well, and the kind of passion that you described.
Yeah, I was going to agree, actually. I think it's a real mix of needing that passion, but also tailoring the communication on why it's important and the skills to the particular audiences. So with some people it'll be about passion, with some people they react to technological issues and technological understanding. Others, as you say, I wrote down common sense, just as you were saying it will just make common sense. I mean, when Alan comes in on our leadership training and talks to a lot of our people who are very scientific engineering kind of background, Alan doesn't talk about sustainable lifestyles because it's an emotional thing that we all need to do. It's very much a project management approach. You know, here's a challenge, here's a project management way of dealing with it. How can you implement it? And these are the benefits, by the way, for you, for the environment, for the business as a whole. So it's tailoring that as well and making sure you capture those messages in the right language.
Thank you.
If I can, just to add a few things. I think if you've got passion without technical capacity, then you're flawed. But if you need the technical capacity and you need the passion, I think one of the points I was making was, in our educational system, we focus very much on science, technology, engineering, maths. It's kind of results. We sometimes miss the idea of creativity. And actually, because we're scored all the time, you're not rewarded for trying and failing, for creating an idea, running with it, falling down. Okay, we learned through that experience. The important thing about passion is that it enables us to bring those ideas, to bring that innovation. And if we're going to go through a transformation to 2050, we need those ideas and we need that innovation. So we need passion, but it needs to be based on evidence. It needs to be based on sound evidence.
Saying this comment about permission to fail is well said. I remember my first job was at B&Q, and the buying director said to the buyers, if 1 in 10 of your products don't fail, you're obviously not trying hard enough. Yeah. If 10 out of them fail, there's a different issue. There was a question at table 14. Yeah.
Here from Data Center, current users. I want to touch upon a point that Preston said at the beginning, so the need of having on the board some controversial people. And I want to link to the skills that are needed that you're mentioning for less technical ones, but more managerial. I wonder whether companies are looking, when recruiting new board members, new experience, are they looking at people with this skill, or are they trying just to mandate and try to look at people in lower hierarchy?
This is building on your point, Stuart, about delegation versus, the role of the boards. Anybody else?
Yeah, I sit on the board of a very small company, the Unpack Recycling Label. It's a subsidiary of the British Retail Consortium. It's me, I am the executive director, but the board is made up of people who are packaging experts and, I suppose, sustainability managers. We're not looking for any kind of creativity. We're a very small business, so we're looking to stay afloat. We're looking for people to steer us in the right direction, to make sure that I'm getting the decisions right in terms of an operational decision. So from a small business perspective, I think it maybe applies slightly differently.
Okay.
From a larger business perspective, we leverage off the board directors who absolutely get this and help get them to influence the rest of the board. Also, we have a relatively newly appointed non-executive director, and we specifically singled her out as somebody we wanted to build up to be a spokesperson for the board on this. So she didn't come with a background. She had an interest, but not a background. And so we're developing her to become very much the spokesperson on the board and the champion on the board. So I think you don't need to necessarily have somebody who's already there and built and ready. You can actually build them and mold them as you want. And certainly our experience is she is hugely open and willing, because we've focused on the business benefits for the organisation, and she absolutely gets that.
I think the whole role of the non-executive director and this agenda is a very interesting one. There's a question at table 11. I've also been asked to make you talk through the microphone because it's easier for recording. And I'm also conscious that we want to do a table session. So who else wants to ask a question? Make sure. So just one more question. So I'll take those two questions, then we'll have the table session. So.
Stephen G, Business in the Community. My question is, are any of your organisations changing their internal accounting or budget setting to support the people who you've trained? You talk about internal collaboration being essential, and have you adjusted anything to avoid blocks of internal budgets?
Okay, if I start. Yeah, I mean, if the question is, do you know what budget you have set aside for doing the kind of things we've talked about, to upskill and to develop more collaborative thinking, etc., I couldn't tell you. Yeah, but in terms of in each of our businesses around the world, we have training programs. We have people dedicated and committed to doing the kind of things that I've talked about, and so there is a cost in place, an investment in trying to achieve the kind of aims that I try to communicate, especially around the more collaborative, holistic thinking towards projects.
What we're not looking to do is to create a whole new training regime over here. What we're looking to do is to embed it in all of our existing training, to integrate it. And that's proving to be very successful. So we have academies within the organisation, and we've infiltrated the academies, and we've influenced their development. So we've built it into business as usual. And that's surely got to be the right way of doing it, rather than actually creating an industry over here, which could be seen as tangential and a separate silo.
Our experience is very much the same in terms of we've embedded sustainability thinking into the Nuclear Leadership Academy that we run, and we're doing a major review of all company-wide learning and development this year to see where sustainability thinking is embedded into it and where it's not as well. So the key point for me is just making this part of how we do business, and not we need a separate sustainability budget for this, we need this, and this. It's just how we're going to do stuff.
Okay, thank you. And the last question over there, table 16.
Is it working? Yeah. Hello, Stella Conway from Rep Risk. I've been listening all morning to some very interesting initiatives that all the different companies are taking to make their operations more sustainable. And it's really exciting to see all these initiatives that are taking place. However, when I think of the destruction that's being carried on as we speak by huge mining companies or paper and pulp industries that are destroying the Amazon rainforest or destroying the glaciers in South America, or when I think of the mining industries, the power industries that are building huge hydroelectric dams where the reservoirs are giving off carbon dioxide, our climate is being destroyed as we speak. I don't think we have time to wait for all of these initiatives that are being put in place to take effect. The destruction is happening now. So my question is, how can we stop these major players from destroying the planet as we speak?
I'll have a stab to give other people time to gather their thoughts on that. I completely agree with you. We don't have the time, and what you've heard today, I would put probably in the category of incremental rather than transformational. We need more transformational change. Transformational change, unfortunately, our market is not designed to create transformational change, because the market forces drive you towards incrementalism unless you can get a significant intervention. And that sort of intervention needs to come, well, it can come from several directions. It can come from technology, but it can also come from government intervention. And we need those interventions desperately, because businesses voluntarily will make incremental change recognizing the need for change, but few will take the leap of faith necessary in the short term for transformational change at a time when the economies are under great stress. So I agree with you, and it worries me deeply, and we need those interventions.
Yeah.
Stuart?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that as well, but I mean, the issue is, of course, is that we're in a linear economic model. So we take, make, and throw away. And until we find a different economic model which is circular, then we will continue to have the kind of pressures on the planet that you've described.
Just chip in, I mean, in terms of our own leadership training that we're doing with our senior leaders around the business, the three key messages from that first session that they actually go through around the urgency of tackling some of these issues, the scale of the challenge and the interconnectedness of all of these issues as well. So we're trying to instill that awareness and mindset in our own people, and that's fired up quite a lot of passion in some of those attendees, as Alan would have seen. In terms of those light bulb moments around literally one guy standing up and saying, I'm really angry that I didn't know this 10 years ago because I could have done something different. So that awareness is something we're trying to instill in our own people as well.
Sorry, can I just build on that? Sorry, Bob.
That's right.
It's just that I think one of the issues is it's fine to say, look, that's wrong and we've got to stop it, but we have to show people a different way. And you know, so we can say, you know, you've got to find a different way, but if there's no positive destination for businesses, then it's actually going to be quite difficult for them to step away from the path that they're on and going in a different direction. So we can't just keep on saying stop because it's wrong. We've got to find an alternative way for them that is positive. And that's possibly goes to the point that you just made, that actually if they'd been able to see that positive destination for them 10 years previously, they would have stepped off the road they were on at that point.
I think that makes the point I was going to make. And actually the point I made earlier was that we will only achieve transformational change through incremental change. We're on a journey to sustainability of products because we started a journey 7 years ago to decrease the weight of packaging on the market. That's quite a transformational change over 7 years, actually. But we wouldn't be here now if we hadn't started there in 2005. Where will we be 7 years from now? We might actually be getting towards sustainable products, and in more than just an environmental sense. We may actually transform the market this way, but until we start taking those steps, incremental steps, we're not going to do it. So the stop message is very clear, completely agree, share a lot of the same concerns, but I don't see any other way of getting to transformational change. We can't just transform in isolation in a vacuum. We don't understand what that transformation is at the moment, certainly for products. So we need to understand it, we need to move together, and we will evolve our thinking, we will become more sophisticated as we go through that journey.
Thank you. I think this debate about transformational change versus incremental change sometimes can get a bit too bipolar. You know, I spent some time helping B&Q and other retailers change their wood supply from non-FSC to FSC. It's still a garden bench. You're buying your garden patio furniture, it's the same old stuff. But if you're in the supply chain going from get whatever you want to you have to know where it comes from, it has to meet these standards, it has to have the blessing of a group set up by NGOs, that's a big change for the sort of the UK garden furniture importers. But for other people, it was a small change. And so it's one person's transformational change is another person's incremental change. And I think that's what you were sort of alluding to in your comment. Really, really useful questions. What we'd like to do now is just ask you, and some of you might want to, you're sort of spread out a bit, but we would like to have a few table discussions. So if you want to sort of fill up some of the tables for about 10, 15 minutes, just exactly on, you know, what are your sort of key observations and what particularly would be your ask of BITC? You know, is there a place, is there a space we can fill in actually helping some of this skill set issues we've been talking about? You'll also see on your desk a piece of paper called Forces for Change. And this is a sort of a collaboration. We want to sort of help set up within BITC, which is to start understanding and agreeing amongst us as a population of business people, what are the sort of the mega trends which we as business people should address, these long-term trends. We're just really asking people, individuals who would like to put their name on that to actually get involved in that type of discussion. So there should be a piece of paper called Forces for Change. So if during that discussion you can quietly write your name down on it if you're interested. Katie, is that everything I need to say about the discussion? Yeah. Okay, so if you just condense, and if we've got a bit of time, we'll get a couple of tables to feedback as well, but I don't think we're going to have time for every table. So, okay, thank you very much. Okay, I hope you found that conversation constructive and useful. If I could remind you, if you want to get involved in that Forces for Change, just write your name on the piece of paper on the table, and we'll collect them up afterwards. I'm going to ask, I think, for 4 tables to, how many have we got? 1, 2, 3. Let's see if we can do them all. So let's start with table 15. Any sort of big observation or ask of BITC you want to make? And then then I'll go to another table and say, yeah, that's the best one we came up with, or here's another one. So we can see if we sort of get a little bit of collateral together here. So table 15, what was your killer observation or ask of BITC?
We probably had a couple of observations. One, just probably the very obvious one, is the importance of leadership within the business to kind of give you the permission to talk about it, and the importance of getting your board members kind of giving you the permission to put it even on an agenda to have that conversation. But probably sort of the big thing, sort of talking about transformational change or sort of incremental things, any change is good. And, you know, those small changes can lead to bigger ideas and it can snowball. And sort of getting to people. I was really interested about the Sustainability Steps kind of online training tool, because it gives people the information and gives them a bit more power to make the correct decisions. Because a lot of the time, sort of especially in retail, people don't know the questions to ask. They might be focused on one particular thing, delivery or the look of the product, but they don't know the other questions to ask. And it's giving them something that's easy and manageable, and to start them thinking in the right directions. And we like the sort of the comment there about how do people think? Is it with a heart, head, or wallet? And targeting your thinking towards how those other people are thinking towards.
$16. 419.
Hi, for table 6, I'm Chris. I'm from Eon AG. I think one of the key points we recognised was it's great focusing on the leaders. It's great focusing on the people at the coalface. But there's an enormous number of people in the middle, the business managers, who we're seeming to miss in all of this. And it's these people who are actually the engine of the business. And they have a massive amount of other responsibilities to take on board and take on the point of the linear business model. We really need to be focusing on these people. They've got too many pressures coming to bear on them and don't understand what sustainability means to them in terms of their objectives that the business is placing on them, or aren't able to communicate what those objectives should be and the connection with what their role in the business is. So I think there's a big opportunity for the BITC to move beyond sort of a more specialised group of people here today, focusing on the leaders at the top and then the people at the coalface.
Okay, yeah, that's really important, thank you. Table behind, I think it's 22 or 23? 22, thank you.
Hello, Ashley Sweetland from CBRE. I think we had a wide-ranging discussion, but one of the core thoughts I was having, and it very much builds on the last point, which is how you mainstream this through an organisation. We're a big multinational business, 30,000 people. If you sign up to the school of thought that you get the behaviours you reward, how can you drive this for an organisation? And that's got to be about the practical things that we can do to integrate sustainability and responsible business practice into frameworks that measure progress and success. And indeed, certainly in professional services firms like ourselves, when it comes to making decisions around performance and the discretionary effort that people put in and how you reward that, making sure that sustainability is a component of the matrix of things being looked at. So I think that's one of the key things for me. And I think there's a role for BITC in setting standards around what that might look like, and very much encouraging people to take steps on that journey.
Thank you. Table 24. Silence on table 24.
Sorry, you got a business in the community speaker here. Nobody else volunteered. I think it was just one of the things that came up here was at the end around education for our young people in terms of teaching, and do our teachers have the skills to really make the STEM agenda attractive and sort of nurture the young people we need for the industry of the future. We talked a little bit about some of the programs that BITC do, work inspiration, etc. We didn't really get onto business class, which is one of our national programs, but just some evidence or what BITC can do to support the teachers as well as the agenda in general, I think.
Interesting. Yeah. Table 14. Have I asked you already? No. Don't be shy.
Yeah, a couple of points. We touched upon a few ones. We started with the regulation and see how transparency was the most important thing, because there was one of the speakers who touched upon trying to get transformative change instead of incremental change, but there must be a push from outside, and one of the factors could have been the government. And we identified that the government could try to facilitate more transparency. We didn't really identify anything that for BITC from our table, so we kind of a black sheet. Then we were highlighting also the importance of embedding sustainability throughout all the business and not working in silos, try to have communication. So yeah, that's what came up in this table.
Table 13, sorry. And then table 12, and then it's...
Thanks. We had a lot of very similar things. So the importance of embedding this into the whole business, into core operations and everyone's role, and not seeing it as a separate skill or unit. The importance of enabling middle management now and making it easy for them to take action in their daily jobs. Collaboration, so we heard from Mighty about how they're working with other competitors in their sector to help their suppliers to change what they do and what they provide. And potential role for BITC around becoming a bit of a centre for excellence and really showing what the best examples are and spreading those more widely.
Okay, thank you. And finally, table 12. Wait for the microphone. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just building on that discussion about collaboration, we had quite a lot of our time spent discussing collaboration, both kind of between between businesses, but also between sectors. So particularly between the business sector and the NGO community, where I think there's increasing activity where NGOs can come in and provide sort of brokerage service between for businesses, particularly between sort of suppliers and their customers. So felt there's real value there, and also finding kind of areas, getting businesses to work together, where they can really sort of find common ground in sort of pre-competitive issues, pre-competitive areas. And we thought maybe there's a space for BITC to actually, broker, to provide a sort of, brokerage kind of service here in terms of, being able to be a sort of, third-party, independent kind of, brokerage player between, to help businesses sometimes overcome some of these competitive issues, where there seems to be, real kind of barriers in terms of actually moving collaboration forward. I think that's kind of the main kind of area of discussion.
All right, thank you very much. We're sort of coming to the end now, and we're sort of a couple of minutes overrunning, so I won't say much more. I think that's really useful feedback, and sort of if there are themes, it's about creating the right space internally within your organisation for conversation and permission to ask the question, and then some collateral and some support on what questions do I actually ask once I've got permission to ask those questions. Interesting don't forget it's not just leaders and the specialists. Don't make this bipolar. It's all the sort of middle managers. And again, 10 years at B&Q, you know how powerful the buyers are in making a sustainability program happen or not, especially when it's all about products. So some really, really useful thoughts there, which I think we'll definitely reflect on. You might have noticed, some of you, that we've got some very powerful and graphic minutes being taken, visual minutes they're called, of cartoons and words being written on the back wall. So the conversations and the themes have been captured. My role is obviously to thank you for coming, thank technical people for their support, and the four speakers saw some really good and useful comments and helping those themes emerge. So I hope you found this morning useful. Thank you for coming, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.